Now let's talk about some basic science concepts and terminology that have not been covered in the previous videos that you have watched for this unit. We're going to start with talking a little bit about the metric system. Now, the United States and some of its territories are the only country in the world that does not use the metric system. The system that we use is called the empirical system. So we basically do our own thing compared to the rest of the world. Medicine uses the metric system. So if you were born in a different country and you're used to metric measurements, this is just a refresher for you. But if you were born in the United States, like me, and raised here, sometimes it can be hard to make the conversion in your head. So we'll start with talking about things that are prefixes. Deca means that it's 10 times whatever. So if I'm talking about a gram, then 10 times that, or 10 grams, would be a decagram. Hecto is 100, so 100 grams. Kilo is 1,000, so 1,000 grams is a kilogram. And mega is 1 million. Now we can go the other direction, which is what you're going to see us do a lot, because we are using small amounts of medication to take care of our patients. So deca is 1/10. So a decigram is 1/10 of a gram. A centigram, or a centimeter, is 1/100th of a meter. A milli, or a millimeter, is 1/1000th of a meter. Micro is 1/1,000,000th. So if it's a micrometer, it's 1/1,000,000th of a meter. And nano is 1/1,000,000,000th. So we start talking about little teeny tiny things. Now, for linear measurements, we tend to use the meter as the standard. And of course, that can be broken up into smaller units. So in the US, we're used to hearing about an inch. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. And a lot of times we just round it to 2.5. A micron is 1/25,000th of an inch. And a meter is about 39.37 inches. So if you've ever heard of a yardstick, yardsticks are 36 inches. So a meter is a little bit longer than a yard. Now when we get into weight measurement, kilograms, or grams, grams is the standard. And again, we can go up or we can go down. We tend to go up from grams. So 1 kilogram is equal to 2.205 pounds. Again, we tend to round to 2.2. 1 pound is 0.4535 kilograms. 28.35 grams is the same as an ounce. Now, in US measurement, we use ounce as a weight measurement but also as a volume measurement. They are not the same. So 1 ounce in weight measurement is 28.35 grams. Remember that 1,000 grams is 1 kilogram. And this always kind of comes in with when we talk about babies. Now we also use it in adults. So if you say, oh, well, I weigh 180 pounds, then you need to be able to convert that into kilograms. So because it's a smaller number, we would take 180 and divide it by 2.2. So a 180-pound person would weigh 81.8 kilograms. But I always think about babies, oh, well, they weigh 9 pounds, 10 ounces. Well, we have to convert that into grams. So you're going to be using that equation or that conversion a lot more than you think you will. Volume measurements. So volume is usually a liquid. And 1 liter is equal to 1.057 quarts. And a quart is, of course, then 0.9461 liters. Now, what's important for you to note here is that 1 liter is equal to 1,000 cubic centimeters. That's what cc stands for. 1 liter is also equal to 1,000 mLs, milliliters. So cubic centimeters, cc's, and milliliters, mLs, are used interchangeably in medicine. So if I say to you, you need to draw up 3 mLs of blood, or you need to draw up 3 cc's of blood, they are the same measurement. Now, believe it or not, drops, GTTS, is the abbreviation for drops. And drops are actually calibrated. Most people think they are not. So there is 15 drops in 1 cc or 1 ml of a liquid. And there are 30 cc's in an ounce, in a fluid ounce. So you need to be able to convert between the empirical and the metric systems. Now we're going to touch on barometric pressure. Now, you've already watched a video on barometric pressure, but there's a couple of things that I want you to know about this that were not covered in the video. So you already know that we measure atmospheric pressure using a barometer. It's an evacuated glass tube about 1 meter long. It is inverted in a reservoir of mercury. Pressure forces the mercury up through the vacuum in the tube, and the distance it goes up is equal to the force that is applied to the pool of mercury at the bottom. Okay? So we covered that in the video. Now, how do we measure that? Well, we can measure it in inches of mercury if we're doing it here in the US. Or in the metric side, which was covered in the video, we can measure it in millimeters of mercury. So these are linear measurements. And this is just a picture showing of what we're talking about. But 760 millimeters of mercury is 29.92 inches. So it just depends on what scale you're using to measure these things. The problem is that height is not a true measurement of pressure, because height is linear. Pressure is the force per unit area. So we know that pressure is equal to the height times the density of the liquid. So at sea level, the atmosphere will support 76 centimeters or 760 millimeters of mercury, or 29.9 inches of mercury. But mercury has a density of 13.6 grams per cubic centimeter, or 0.491 pounds per cubic inch. So if we look at that, we can say that the barometric pressure of mercury at 1 atmosphere is 1,035 grams per square cubic centimeter, or 14.7 pounds per square inch, or what we call PSI. But what happens if we use a different liquid? What if we use water? Well, we do use water for lower pressures, and we measure that in centimeters of water. Now, why do we use it for lower pressures? Because water is 13.6 times less dense than mercury. So at 1 atmosphere, the length would be 33.9 feet of water. That's the same as a 2-story building. So by using a different liquid, we can use a different scale. That's all we're doing here, is we're using different scales to measure the exact same thing. In the metric system, we use what we call SI, or Standard International Units. And that is the metric system. And pressure is usually measured in SI units in what are called kilopascals. And 1 kilopascal is equal to 10.2 centimeters of water, or 7.5 torr, or millimeters of mercury. Remember that torr and millimeters of mercury are the same. In the next video, we're going to talk about how do we convert between one scale and another scale.